A pleasure to meet all at last. Welcome back to the channel again, but yeah, if you can't already tell the way I'm feeling right now, I mean, this was as big of a decision that I've pretty much had to make with the majority of my business. As you know, I've had a lot of social media in general. I've had experience of all sorts, years and years of usage of a lot of platforms, starting as far back as the first time I ever used a computer. And that, of course, was very early in my time. So the big thing is that, well, the early 2000s was quite a big time, but if there's one big thing about it, then it would be the invention of social media. But as impressive as that sounds, seeing that my social media part of my career has gone so far back, even more than the business of Kaiju Force Neo itself, I've come back here today to let you know that, well, as saddening as it sounds, I've made a very difficult decision to close off the majority of my social media. There's a lot of accounts that I have that are still out there, but there are some that I have never used, not even in a while. I've never used Vine because, well, obviously that's been discontinued. I've never used Facebook because of a lot of things. I've never used Snapchat and TikTok, obviously, and I never will. And to top it off, the majority of accounts that I do have and I have used have actually become some things in my life that I probably will not have around any longer. Today is May 10th, 2021, and it's come to my attention that, well, it's time for me to go on forward and shut them down. But not all of them. Of course, I will be keeping around ones that I use all the time, like Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, pretty much. But that's probably going to be about it for this point going forward. Of course, I'll no longer be using Facebook, but that's probably going to be something that I might have to talk about a while from now, considering all that's been going on that platform alone. When you compare it to other things out there, I'm still going to continue, well, campaigning to have Snapchat and TikToks removed from the face of the earth. And, of course, many other platforms out there I will sorely miss until the end of time. Like Vine, of course. But the big thing here is that for the majority of my social media accounts, there are other platforms that I still have out there, including WhatsApp, Mastodon, and Tango, pretty much. I also have Storyfire still, as crazy as that sounds, but that's only because I just found out that I still have that account around, and, well, I don't know about you, but I really have not had myself a good time spent on that platform. Especially with all the crap we're seeing from McJuggernuggets by this point. So, as terrible as that sounds, I mean, I'd really rather not keep going forward with like any of those, pretty much. Because Mastodon's been little more than a clone to Twitter, and the only reason why I started that account is because of when Twitter decided to permanently suspend both accounts that I had at the time. Because, as you know, starting back in February 2016 was when my first Twitter account, which of course dates back to August 12th of 2006, making it one of the oldest existing accounts ever on Twitter. And probably one of the oldest social media accounts ever in the world, pretty much. Twitter had pretty much given in to the many falsified reports that hackers, spammers, trolls, and all that crap have basically put up against me. All because my popularity my popularity was skyrocketing over time, especially between 2010 and 2014. Those years in particular were where I did start growing quite a bit more than I used to. I didn't really expect too much to happen, but February 2016, the night after I got back from the prom, I basically got onto my computer and found out that I had apparently been locked out. And as crazy as that sounds, it's just terrible. There were really a lot of problems that were associating with it, and I couldn't really be sure if this lockout was just some sort of automatic thing. And then when I logged back on the next morning, that's exactly what happened. I was locked out because I had been suspended for the very first time on Twitter. I mean, there is just no way that I could have gotten myself suspended just because of things that I do. So I did some research and I found out that, well, there were a few people out there who had actually been tagging my username and pretty much, well, trying to use that as an excuse to try and get me suspended or removed from Twitter permanently. But thankfully, as time passed, I was able to get a new cell phone and the like, and eventually start, well, figuring out ways to get back into my Twitter account as a whole. So when I got back on there, though, the first thing I did was pretty much cut those guys off permanently. So all you guys out there who mess with my account like that, well, you're going to be going through the same problems as they are. IP banning, permanent suspension, and all sorts of banning possibilities that really exist to this day. But here we are, more than 5 years later after that incident took place, and with all the things that have been happening on my Twitter account, well, the first one to say the least, because I eventually made a second one back in fall 2018. So, not even 3 years, but this account has basically been my new default, pretty much, in terms of Twitter, as the first one had to be removed due to this permanent suspension that Twitter decided to do. They apparently had been playing these stupid games with me all the time, and that permanent suspension with both of my accounts truly meant that they are, in fact, just wanting to become unrecognizable fads in history. So, I will have my revenge someday, but going back to some other things that I might as well go ahead and talk about, because, man, that was kind of a long thread alone. Mastodon, of course, well, like I said, I only started it because my first account had been permanently suspended, along with the other one. And by the time I managed to get, well, my second account back after removing my first one from existence, that kind of left Mastodon out of the question. So, I haven't really used it to this day, so to speak. So, the big thing here is that, well, I probably don't really have any use for it anymore. As for my other platforms out there, like, well, as I've said, Storyfire had been founded by McJuggernuggets, which, of course, is probably as awful of a channel as could possibly be. Kid Behind a Camera was bad. Call Me Carson is just absolutely dreadful. Game Grumps is just all sorts of things that we don't even need anymore. We don't need to hear nothing from them. We don't need to see nothing from them. They can just kiss their butts goodbye, as far as I know. We'll hate them until the end of time. But the main thing here, in terms of the other social media platforms as well, WhatsApp is something that I've hardly ever used for years, and Tango, I've said before that I would want to stream on it monthly, but guess what? That's been almost impossible. Given to the fact that there's a huge list of different rules out there, some of which is actually correlated to what YouTube basically requires you to do if you want to keep your channel and all that. If you want to keep your accounts, then, well, YouTube and Tango pretty much have a lot of similarities. Although, between both of them, one's younger than the other, one's more obscured than the other, and one does not feature as many well-known creators out there. So, of course, by me hopping onto that bandwagon, I kind of expected there to not be very many people, and sure enough, that's kind of what happened. I will say, though, that there are a couple other problems that I might as well address while I'm at it. The main one being that every time I stream on Tango, I can never quite seem to figure out how my streams are like archived. It's not like they have them stored in like a scroll down list pretty much, kind of like Instagram or Twitter where you can scroll down on your device and you'll be able to see all the posts that you basically uploaded. That is, of course, unless you want to delete any of them or have them privated for whatever reason, but that's pretty much the main problem I've had, trying to figure out where the posts are. Like, where are my streams? Why are they gone? Why are they not showing up? But otherwise, I've kind of failed on my own commitment to, well, stream on there monthly. And I can probably go ahead and back that up, that it was for a good reason. I've hardly had the time to do any streaming, especially with all this good stuff around here. And as I just mentioned, there are a ton of rules out there that YouTube itself is already responsible for forcing you to abide by just so you can keep your account. Unless you wanted to kiss it goodbye overnight, but basically Tango is also out of the question. So Mastodon, WhatsApp, and Tango is pretty much all out. Storyfire, of course, has its share of, well, notoriety, so that's also going to be gone. So otherwise, well, expect me to never use Facebook. Expect me to never go on to TikTok or Snapchat, as I'm still going to find ways to get them all banned permanently. And whether you like it or not, I mean, I'm basically doing the right thing, getting rid of the bad eggs in the breakfast platter. Now, hopefully that was some good wordplay for you, but once again, expect those platforms of mine to be gone for sure. I'll probably have memoriams served in honor of all these accounts, just like I did with the first Twitter account, as also seen in, well, Nerf Secrets Revealed Bolts of Intrigue, for example. But the main thing here is that it's about time that I start cleaning up my social media feed itself. And in addition to changes that I've pretty much made towards a lot of my accounts and all that good stuff, I might as well go ahead and leave behind a special post that will be dedicated in memory of these accounts before I have them deleted for good. Starting next month in June is where all of the other accounts of mine that I've gotten are going to be deactivated or completely removed, depending on, well, what kind of content is available on there. Of course, there's a good chance that I might actually fish some content out of it and then have them all uploaded to my primary social media platform accounts, like Twitter and Instagram. But, of course, the big thing here is that, well, I've had high hopes for all of them. But Mastodon, Tango, WhatsApp, Storyfire, and many other platforms out there that I have tried my whole life do not seem to be working out with me, just as I hoped for in any sense of the way. So, thanks for sticking by, and thanks for, well, at least looking me up in any possible way, but it's now time to move on. It's time to close the book on this chapter throughout, well, I can at least say right now that this is the worst year in history. Worse than anything, really. But you know what? I'm going to save that for later, because we aren't even close to being done with this year, as terrible as it could possibly be. So, If you want to see more go down on my channel, then make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.